short introduction. By the way, I don't have a professor title. If you meant this word in the sense of a teacher, then it's correct, but I don't have this title. I will share my screen.
Yes, we see.
Yeah.
And
Full screen?
don't remember to share the voice.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can hear me?
Yes, yes.
Great. Then I will start. Frédéric Chopin's 24 Préludes, Opus 28, represent a milestone in the development of the piano preludes. To this day, these works are still viewed analytically with a strong focus on their connections to Baroque traditions, particularly Johann Sebastian Bach's 2 volumes of the Well-Tempered Clavier. See, for example, Ruth Tedler's work from 2020. Other studies also consider the contemporary compositional environment, in example, prelude cycles and collections written in the immediate period preceding Opus 28, as a possible source of inspiration for Chopin. For example, the writings by Eigeldinger, Meyer, Riemsdijk, and Leakin. Another more recent work on keyboard improvisation in the post-classical and early Romantic periods is the one by Dana Goulet. This study paints a vivid picture of a chapter in the history of piano improvisation directly preceding and surrounding Chopin. The work is based on authentic contemporary sources and also treats secular prelude practice on the piano as part of a great improvisational tradition that manifested itself in a wide variety of stylistic manifestations. The improvisational skills of Georg Josef Vogler, Johann Nepomuk Hummel, and Ignaz Moscheles are considered, as well as those of the subsequent generation of pianists. Schumann and Liszt in particular are taken into account. Kenneth Hamilton is an authority in the field of artistic research on the subject of improvisation and the art of preluding in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. In several publications, in which he concentrates mainly on Liszt, he deals with the improvisation practice of the pianiste-compositeur and compositeur-pianiste in the period in question, whereby he brings to light research results as the basis of contemporary historically informed performance practice in a wide range, which he also implements in his own recording productions by means of his dual talent as a musicologist and as a concert pianist. Finally, an important, more recent work in German language is the 2-volume dissertation by Philipp Feldhort. This work takes Carl Czerny's music theoretical and music pedagogical writings as its basis in order to create a detailed picture of improvisation and especially of prelude practice and its mediation in the early Romantic period. It is of particular interest that the works of the contemporary Friedrich Kalkbrenner are also discussed within Feldhort's extensive study. These works, namely Kalkbrenner's 24 Preludes, Opus 88, may have had an influence on Chopin that should not be underestimated. However, all these approaches to Chopin's Opus 28 deal little or not at all with the thesis of the music theory behind the craft of improvisation in general or the art of preluding in particular. This study attempts to fill this gap by examining 4 selected writings on three selected writings on Preludes theory below, those by Johann Gottfried Vierling, André Ernest Modeste Grétry, and Philip Anthony Corey. Neither has this selection taken into account whether the authors of these treatises were known to each other, nor whether Chopin could have known these writings. Also, the influence of Chopin's main teachers in music theory, Joseph Elsner and Karol Turpinski, is considered as a separate issue, which has been explored to a large extent and should not be the topic of this presentation. Rather, the writings discussed now were deliberately chosen with an eye to their scattered publication sites across Europe as music theoretical writings that could be considered representative of local traditions within the time span of circa 1790 to 1820. Let us start with Johann Gottfried Vierlings Versuch einer Anleitung zum Präludieren für Ungeübtere from 1794. Vierling was a Thuringian organist, composer, and music theorist. His place of education, life, and work was the small town of Schmalkalden, southwest of the musical centers of Weimar and Erfurt. Vierling studied with Johann Nikolaus Tischer, whose successor as Schmalkalden organist he became in 1768. An education with Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, stated in older publications, cannot be proven with certainty, nor can that with Johann Philipp Kirnberger. In terms of the revival of the preluding tradition in contemporary discourse, Vierling certainly represents a more substantial chapter than one might possibly give him credit for at first glance. Although Vierling's Versuch consists of only 28 pages, its contents are nonetheless essential. The book uses thorough bass as a basis for inventing preludes to be used in church music. Right in paragraph 3, the author introduces the Sitz der Akkorde, seat of the chords, a terminological equivalent to the concept of the rule of the octave common in 18th century German language treatises. Furthermore, it is interesting that Vierling already in paragraph 2 presents a selection of keys in which the improviser might modulate. For both major and minor keys as starting points, these keys are listed in a hierarchy, whereas the keys listed first are the most related ones, the keys placed more right, the less related ones. The numerous examples of preludes that appear beginning on page 11 often include unannotated musical schemata, respective sequential models. In part, these form the basis for imitations within three-part settings, which Vierling was apparently particularly interested in. The Versuch experienced a circulation far beyond the borders of the Thuringian province. In 1827, it was even translated into English language. Only a few years after Vierling's introduction, André Ernest Modeste Grétry's méthode simple pour apprendre à préluder, en peu de temps avec toutes les ressources de l'harmonie, appears in the World, Metropolis, and Music City of Paris. Compared to Vierling's writing, this work contains considerably more text and deals with the art of preluding on the piano, in example, the invention of preludes in the secular musical realm. Nevertheless, the music theoretical contents of both treatises are not far apart. However, Grétry's didactic approach is completely different. His méthode simple can be described as a typical French music theoretical writing of its time. The preface announces a method based on chord inversion thinking, respective the basse fondamentale after Rameau, a method which is based on only two chords, the fundamental chord and the seventh chord. The execution of this method is then carried out on more than 90 pages within 18 lessons, ranging from simple exercises on cadences to diminution instructions to complex harmonic elaborations of chromatic lines. Current music theoretical content from outside France is also included. The last harmonic sequence is very similar to Georg Josef Vogler's Tonkreis, also widely known as Teufelsmühle, the devil's mill. Still a decade later, Philip Anthony Corey's original system of preluding appears in England as the fourth volume of L'Anima di Musica. Here, two chords form the point de départ, the perfect or common chord, and the leading chord of the seventh. Although the author does not refer to the French tradition at any point in the few text passages in the book, he explicitly opposes the tradition of thorough bass, as is pointed out by Bacigalupi. It is also Bacigalupi to describe this treatise as belonging to the so-called parrot schools, which he contrasts with another category, the delayed teaching books on figured bass. He attributes the term parrot school to an anonymous review of Corey's original system of preluding, which states, "To think of teaching the art of preluding without some previous knowledge of thorough bass or harmony is like teaching a parrot to reason." Within his teaching book, Corey defines 6 styles of preludes. Preludes in the first style consist of a sequence of only 3 chords. Preludes in the second style comprise 5 chords. In the third through fifth styles, the cadence is not extended. Rather, the sonority and technical difficulty are rapidly increased. Already from the first style, the bass line is recommended to be played in octaves, by the way. Preludes of the fourth and fifth styles exemplify the nature of rapidly played figurations in small note values, which are mainly consisting of triads and scales. According to Corey, those preludes comprise per definitionem codas or finales, fourth style, as well as capos or introductions with suitable codas, fifth style. The final chapter contains examples of complete preludes or capriccios, composed pieces, some of which are of remarkable musical content and, last but not least, present schemata or sequential models, but without classifying or even commenting on them. The last of the preludes in the sixth style bears some similarities to Chopin's prelude, opus 28, number 4 in E minor. This is not to claim that Corey's treatise was a source of inspiration for Chopin, but merely to highlight an apparently typical prelude style in the time preceding and surrounding the composition of Chopin's cycle of preludes. Conclusions. I would now like to conclude my presentation by briefly drawing some selected conclusions from the study of treatises on the art of preluding from the late 18th and early 19th centuries with regard to the analysis of Chopin's Preludes opus 28. 1. The prelude was a genre influx in the early 19th century. The secular piano prelude possessed a great closeness to the etudes. Both genres, preludes and etudes, could represent compositional or improvisational sketches or exercises that were either notated or not written out, while an etude focused on a technical piano problem. a prelude concentrated on a compositional aspect, although here the boundaries often appear blurred. At the same time, a process of emancipation of the preludes from a subsequent work took place. Due to the fact that preludes were upgraded to independent, self-sufficient compositions at the beginning of the 19th century, but at the same time the art of preluding was still alive as part of improvisation in the secular realm, it could potentially come to a prelude in front of a prelude. Short introductions that occasionally precede Chopin's preludes or etudes can be seen as notated examples of such compositional practice. 2. One aspect of style-forming elements that should not be underestimated is the construction of cadences. Chopin shows in this point as distinctly individual. Only very few of his cadences can be reconciled with the categories shown in teaching books on the art of preluding between circa 1790 and 1830. Thus, the cadenza semplice at the end of the Prelude Opus 28 number 4 in E minor is an exception. 3. Preludes consisting of diminished or ornamented chord progressions, as they probably play a role in all treatises on prelude practice, represent a type still cultivated at the beginning of the 19th century. Several of the preludes from Chopin's Opus 28, number 1 in C major, number 8 in F sharp minor, number 14 in E flat minor, number 19 in E flat major, can be assigned to this type. And finally, 4. The individualization of traditional schemata and sequential models, as well as their simultaneity, are important stylistic elements in Chopin's oeuvre. This statement is by no means only valid for the Preludes Opus 28. In the instructions for preluding, unsaid things about this should also be read between the lines, such as the possibility of rhythmic metric alteration of sequential models pointed out by Feeling in his treatise. Chopin also makes use of such a possibility in the Prelude Opus 28 number 4. He individualizes here a faux bourdon, which is enriched with a sequence of seventh dissonances by means of chromatization as well as rhythmic metric irregularity. The high degree of variety at this level allows the monotony in the melody part to carry over such a long distance. The study of the theory of preluding, which immediately precedes in time Frédéric Chopin's 24 Preludes Opus 28, is a hitherto little explored subject. A reinterpretation of the works concentrating on the technical aspects of composition and improvisation is then almost inevitable from the perspective of current historically informed music theory. At the same time, this expands the panorama of the history of music theory in the late 18th and early 19th centuries, which is basically considered to be fully explored by giving preluding theory, the rules of the art of prelude playing, that is, its rightful place in the music theoretical discourse as an independent and weighty subdiscipline of improvising theory. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stephan, for this presentation, for this interesting approach to Chopin's music. I can connect to the experience of hearing those preludiums being performed in Pristina by a fantastic pianist all along our festival, but especially this year by a French pianist, Nathaniel Gouin. And maybe just to complement what one of the performers, Peter Donohoe, famous pianist, considers Chopin as kind of inventor of the modern style of playing piano. And he considers that after Chopin, everything became different in piano
Yes.
composition technique and also piano technique. A very interesting approach of the very beloved pieces of all of us who listen and enjoy Chopin.
After
Thank you.
Opus 28, everything became different in the field of Préludes.
Yes, in general. So I would like to invite all of us who have maybe